Let's get right into it. ASU, Utah. We're talking Friday Night Lights. These Friday Night Light games, I don't remember them being this memorable. They're really stacking that Friday card. There's been a lot of really, really good games. This one, I think, is still a pretty good game. An old Pac-12 matchup. So excited to represent there. This is at ASU, so in our backyard here. What's your initial thoughts here? These are again a Big 12 matchup, but really two teams that are very familiar with each other.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to sound crazy here, but this game has all the makings of an upset. Look, Isaac Wilson, starting quarterback for the Utah Utes, he isn't bad, right? He's a four-star recruit, but when you look at the team stats in weeks 1 and 2, where Cam Rising started, versus weeks 3 through 5, they had a bye week last week, where Wilson did. It's pretty obvious what's happening here. Utah's EPA on passing plays is down 66%. Their passing plays explosiveness is down 33%. And this all seems to be affecting the run game because Micah Bernard cannot get it going as much as he used to be able to. And their EPA on a rushing plays is down a whopping 61%. So this offense is just struggling through and through, both in the air and in the ground, but when Cam was in versus when Cam is out. Now, on ASU sides, Kenny Dillingham has this team absolutely ready to play. They have a higher overall offensive EPA and success rate, and they're stronger in both the pass and the run. And so when you kind of break this down, in the rush, they are absolutely smoking Utah. Their EPA per rush is 0.3 versus Utah's 0.08. And Cameron Scadaboo is the best running back that we're not talking about. And listen, as an Arizona alum, I want nothing more than to discredit ASU every chance I get. But you got to face the facts. You got to face the numbers here. Their rushing success is 23% higher than Utah's is. And then you look at Sam Levitt getting it done through the air for ASU. Their EPA per pass is 0.32 compared to Utah's 0.19. Now, listen, we think about Utah football, we're thinking about Utah's defense, and that is where they do have an advantage. But if you look there, ASU is no slouch either, right? And so for me, I'm really concerned here because statistically speaking, Utah hasn't faced an offense as efficient as ASU's, and their offense is actually more efficient than Arizona's, right? A team they just lost to. So, you put in two good defenses who are, pretty fine there with an offense that is clearly leaps and bounds better than Utah that you have it with ASU. I think the 5.5 is a bargain, quite frankly. And I think the upset alert is absolutely on in back-to-back games for Utah. Now, this is not my off the numbers pick. We're going to talk about a different game because I feel morally obligated to pick one. But if I didn't have that game already picked, this would be my pick of the week and my upset.
Huh. Okay. I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree with all the numbers there. Obviously, those are pretty objective. Market is buying Utah here, 6.5, open at 5.5. And to me, it's the question around Cam Rising, right? What are you going to get? You talked about some of the splits. This team has looked very different under Cam Rising, and there's just secrets around this. They're coming off a bye. It's still unclear who we're going to get at quarterback there for Utah. The one thing I will point out that you touched on a little bit is they are equal on some of the ball, but I would say Utah definitely has a strength in the defense. We're looking at the 5th overall weighted EPA defense in our data set and the 6th overall points per equal in our database. So this is a team in Utah that isn't allowing a lot of points once teams drive on them. And I wonder if that is enough to slow this ASU team down and maybe why the market is buying a bit. So I don't know. I think you're going to see this number kind of jump all over the place with Cam Rising either in or out. And it's kind of been like that week in and week out where this huge question, and it looks like he's worth anywhere from 3 to 5 points, depending on the week. So it's a big swing. So if you feel like there's no way Cam Rising is going to be in there, this is probably the best spot you're going to get to bet ASU, because that number is only going to come down if he's not going to be playing. I don't really have an opinion here. I do kind of agree with you. I just wonder if Utah is equipped to slow ASU's offense down. And then what do we get, right? Because if they can slow the pass down and it's just kind of an on the ground gauntlet game, they're just kind of throwing haymakers. I don't know. You kind of want to favor the better team, but again, I think that all is also around having Cam in the game. If Cam Rising is playing, I think that adds a little bit more dynamic for Utah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying, but I have the same question in the reverse though, because if ASU can kind of slow down Utah's offense or Utah's passing game specifically. I mean, we've already seen the hit come in their running game, and I think ASU is just absolutely equipped for a ground and pound slugfight. I think it actually plays to their
That's
advantage,
what
and
they
so
want.
we'll see. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Cam Rising's contribution to this team's offense, their efficiency, and their explosiveness, most importantly, cannot be overstated. And so there are definitely points to be had here. Now, I haven't seen much from media days from Kyle Whittingham, but it seemed to be at least early reports showing that Wilson is going to get the start here. But we played this will he won't he game for like
Yeah.
3 weeks now, right? So I don't trust
Yeah.
anything so
No.
far. To your point about who's going to start this game.
Yeah, is exactly right. So you're taking the points, Arizona plus 6.5 if you had to take a bet in this game.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I think I'd either take that or just stay away. I have some concerns that Utah can stop ASU, but 6.5. I forget what it did open at 3.5 or did it open at 5? I can't remember.
That's a great
Eric, can
question.
we
Let
pull
me
that
have
up real quick? Just the graphic here. It should have that on there. There it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
good call.
So open at 3.5 here. So I think what you're seeing is a lot of the fluctuation with Cam now at 6.5, but even our model kind of put it a little bit more in the direction of Utah. I think it's a stay away for me. I think it's a stay
Yeah.
away for me.
I do have one question though. Part of me wonders, and this is just purely philosophical, but
Yeah.
we talked about this with Florida State, right? How Florida State went through. They obviously got the transfer portal thing going on, and that's been an absolute collapse of a program. I'm not saying Utah's collapsing, not saying that, but I do wonder. We talk about Florida State living on its brand name, being favored for the first few games of the season, when clearly the building was on fire.
Yeah.
I wonder, is the Cam Rising effect just kind of buoying this Utah team where we've seen 3 games of Isaac Wilson and it's just really not the same team? Are they still kind of getting too much respect, do you think?
That's interesting. I mean, I'll tell you, I think it's a really good question. And I think that the reality of modeling it is pretty difficult as well, because you're left with a handful of games with Cam Rising at this new team. You have now more data with him not in the team. So,
Sure.
Your kind of modeling instinct is, okay, well, you're going to go and look where games he's played and you're going to compare that to games he hasn't. And that's how you're going to come up with something of how much he's worth. But the problem is you don't have as much data on how many points he's worth in context of this season in this team. And so you can definitely inflate a number. Now, on the flip side of that, you could also be underestimating his effect as well. So it is tricky here. We've seen it over and over. This season seems to be a little bit more riddled with a kind of 50-50 kind of chance on this, but we've seen in the past that the market tends to overreact on these quarterback moves. And actually, quite frankly, we saw a good example last week. I mean, if you would have polled retail bettors on Clemson, Florida State, this thing opened at 4.5. Then it came out that Uyunglele was going to be injured and it was going to be the backup. There probably wasn't a number big enough that a retail client wouldn't have laid that. But then what did they end up? They ended up only losing by like 16 or something, right? So you can definitely overreact to these backup quarterbacks, because unlike in the NFL, these rooms can be insanely deep with talent. I mean, in some cases, the backup might be better than the starting quarterback. I'm not saying that's the case for Utah, but it gets tricky here. I don't know. I'm all puts it around 5. I would kind of lean on to where the data puts it. No real bet here. 6.5. I think is, if you're going to want to be an ASU better, I think that's a number to grab. If you want to be a Utah better, I would wait and see if Cam doesn't start, you're going to get a better number.
Yeah. And the last thing I will say about this, kind of to your point about the quarterback room. Yeah, I think there definitely is an overreaction. That's things to look out for, because we've seen this phenomenon. So if you guys are familiar with what our kind of game plan is, and we bet openers, right? That's really where our model shines at for college and NFL. But, we've seen this sort of phenomenon this year where we get an opening number, we see this number travel one way or the other, and then it kind of almost come full circle in some of these cases. And so timing is everything, right? And so if you're keeping touch on those media days, you're keeping touch on those coaches conferences, you're trying to get some information arbitrage to say, hey, who's going to start? If you see an Isaac Wilson being put in there, that it could be an idea to help, hey, go ahead and fire that bet soon before the market catches up. Because you can get, I mean, 3 points is huge, right? I mean, six and a
Yeah,
half to 3.5.
huge. I mean, to me, this number is basically showing this is Cam starting. To me, this number is an assumption Cam will be the starter here. And so if you don't think that that's true, I would wait to bet that if you want to be a Utah backer.